All right. Welcome to the Urban Action Showcase virtual experience. My name is Demetrius Angelo. I am the founder and executive producer, and welcome to the ninth annual. We've been rolling with the punches ever since the pandemic. We've been virtual, but we've been very grateful because we've been able to have some exceptional panels and guests that Lord knows that we wouldn't be able to afford if it weren't people sitting in their living rooms. So I am very, very excited and honored to present today the Comic Creators of Color panel for Apocalypse 91. These are some amazing artists and storytellers, and I'm going to hand the reins over to Troy Jeffrey Allen. He's the moderator, and of course, he's part of this project as well. And thank you in advance. And I'm going to hide myself and let you do what you do, sir.
Thank you, Demetrius. All right, what's up, Urban Action fans? Yes, I am host Troy Jeffrey Allen, and I'm one of the people behind Chuck D Presents Apocalypse 91, Revolution Never Sleeps. It is an anthology book that is coming out from Z2 Comics later this year. And just to give you a quick synopsis before I introduce my panel, it celebrates the 30th anniversary of Apocalypse 91, The Enemy Strikes Back, which basically this is a commemorative sequel to the end as an anthology. And contributing to that book, on top of Chuck D, of course, is Evan Narcisse, who's written books like Spider-Man Miles Morales. What's up, Evan?
Hey, what's up? Thanks. It's great to be here, Troy.
Thanks, man. Thanks for coming aboard. Regine Sawyer, who's worked on plenty of books, but also Dark Knight's Death Metal. What's up, Regine?
Hey, thanks for having me.
Cool. We also have Che Grayson, who's not here with us on the show today, but we also have Coy Turnbull, who I worked with on my personal project, Words from the Future. What's up, Coy?
What's up? How you doing?
Cool. I'm doing all right, man. Look, guys, I'm glad you did this. I'm glad you wanted to do this. The book itself has gotten a lot of press, and I've been seeing plenty of fun interviews like floating around with Chuck D. But I wanted to focus on the people that part of the creative team that made it happen. And also, I want to give a shout out off the top to Chris Robinson, who got us all involved in this project. I'm assuming, right? Yeah, there you go. Thank you very much. And he's not on this panel, of course, but we're going to dive into the making of this comic and also our experiences with Public Enemy. So let's just kick things off. What was your first time discovering the music of Public Enemy? And I'll give you an example. I have a very distinct memory of being about 9 years old. Right. My sister, who's older than me, of course, was always watching Jukebox. I don't know if you guys remember Jukebox. It was like
I remember.
right? Okay. You would pay to play a music video or whatnot. I'm taking some of y'all back.
Yeah.
All the way back.
I'll be back.
All the way back. Right. So, 911 is a joke. Used to come on all the time in steady rotation. Now, me being 9, of course, I thought it was funny. It had Flavor Flav, and of course, he's doing these grand gestures and doing what Flavor Flav does. But it wasn't actually later until the He Got Game movie that I really kind of delved into the music of Public Enemy and what it meant. I had already been a fan of Rage Against the Machine, System of a Down, so this kind of fell into that category for me. So what about you? And I'll start with you, Coy. How did you first encounter Public Enemy?
I first encountered Public Enemy at a block party in Brooklyn, actually. I don't remember the song, but I remember it was booming through the big old speakers, and pretty much was like, what is that? And all I can remember is Flavor Flav going, 911 is a joke in your, So basically years later, when by the time I get to Arizona come out, the lyrics, I remember it hit me, but it went over my head.
Right. Yeah.
And then years later, there was a friend of mine who was from Arizona, and we're sitting there talking over the Maury Povich show, and he mentioned to me that Arizona didn't vote for MLK Day until later on in the year and all that good stuff. And I remember this. I don't remember what came over me, but I got angry. I remember looking at him saying, "Wait, you guys didn't vote for MLK Day?" And he's like, "Yeah, it was either that or it was you're gonna get a federal holiday taken away from us." And I was like, "That was the argument that you guys went on, and that's what you voted on." And Chuck's lyrics hit me right then and there. And from that point on, I started listening to his lyrics a little bit differently because up until that point, I don't think I had I don't think I had a revolutionary bone in my body at that point. It was, I was accepting whatever was given to me, and then
Right.
Chuck, bam, changed that entire perspective for me, changed the script for me. Right
No, absolutely. I can totally relate to that. Absolutely. What about you, Evan? What was your first encounter with Public Enemy?
My adolescence was spent on Long Island, so they were pretty proximate to me. As a matter of fact, I had a play cousin named Dunmeek who was friends with Harry Allen, and I think he went to Adelphi. Some of the crew went to Adelphi, a college in Long Island. So, and Dunmeek also used to host a radio show on Adelphi. So, between Dunmeek and some of the local college radio stations, I heard Public Enemy early on. Probably tracks, some of the singles from the first couple of albums. Definitely like My Uzi Weighs a Ton. I heard on the radio. I heard Public Enemy #1 a ton on the radio. And I remember that the single for Rebel Without a Pause, I think the B-side was my 98, was one of the first albums I bought with my own money. I'm pretty sure it was that. I don't know if y'all are old enough to remember TSS, Times Square stores. Yes, but yeah, there was one in my neighborhood, like a couple of miles from home, long walk, and I bought it, and I put that record. My mom was a nurse who worked nights, and I used to put it on the record player and bump it loud when she was at work. So yeah, Public Enemy definitely was part of the soundtrack of me growing up, for sure.
Awesome. What about you, Regine? How did you first encounter Public Enemy?
Well, my brother, he's about 13 years older than me. He was very, very much a musician, still is, and he would play all various different types of music in the house, and that included Public Enemy. And I remember being very hit by Shut 'Em Down. I feel like that's my anthem these days. I truly do. But I think what hit me the hardest was when Do the Right Thing came out. And even before that, because a lot of my family was out in Brooklyn. I'm a Queens born and bred, and they were in the same neighborhood where it was being filmed. So they were also there where the video was being filmed as well. And so I would hear, the stories about, the movie filming and, seeing Public Enemy film their video and whatnot. So when the movie came out and then subsequently the video came out, it hit me extremely hard because during that time there was just a lot of like racialized violence, which I guess is still happening. It is what it is. And in New York City at the time, we had several different cases out on Howard Beach, Brooklyn, this in various spaces. So you could smell it and hear it. Like there was like a buzz in the air. So when Fight the Power came out, along with Do the Right Thing, it was a call to arms.
Yeah.
And it just always stayed with me, especially as we're looking out into the world of what's going on now.
Absolutely. So we talked a little bit about Chris, but like, how did you all get involved? Do you have like a small story you can tell about this? I'll start with you, Coy.
Well, basically, I got an email from Chris Robinson asking me to be a part of the project. And honestly, as soon as I saw the words Apocalypse 91, I was like, and then obviously Chuck D's name afterwards, I was like, well, you sold me. You got me from there. And pretty much it was a roller coaster ride from there. I mean, in terms of like, I had other projects that was landing at the same time. So basically, my thing is get done what's in front of me. But man, I was chomping at the bit to get onto this because there's a certain energy and a certain edginess that, PE always represented to me. And to me, that edginess was what, I wanted to, to display in the work. So, if I basically, it was by chance, but I'm so glad that I was a part of it because I was a big fan of the group. I mean, maybe not a huge fan in terms of like, because I meet other fans who are, they can recite extreme lyrics from the B-sides, and I'm like, okay, all right, maybe not quite that good, but I do love the group, so glad to be a part of it.
No, excellent. What about you, Evan? How did you get involved in the project?
Similar story to Coy. back when I was writing the early stages of negotiating and writing Rise of the Black Panther for Marvel, Chris was an editor in the Black Panther office. So, we had a prior kind of a relationship before that. And then later, he wound up at Z2, the publisher for this project. And he reached out to me and like Coy, it was like, PE bet, I'm down, I'm there. It's I think probably for all of us, like Public Enemy's music is the first place I learned and heard about like revolutionary language and thoughts. Actually, I shouldn't say that. I'm disgracing my ancestors. I'm Haitian American, so my mom definitely was like, yeah, no, these white folks. We have a history of defying their extremist practices, let's just say. But yeah, Public Enemy helped reinforce that, the stuff I learned growing up from my mom, right? So like the very idea of revolution is something, like I said, I learned probably from the cultural history of the place where my parents come from. But Public Enemy helped me realize that same spirit has always been active throughout all of Black history, really.
What about you, Regine?
I'm similar to Evan. I had a previous working relationship with Chris. I worked on the first Marvel's Voices. And so that was in early 2020. And so earlier in the year, I was going through a lot of things, actually. So I was ignoring all of my email. And so
that's understandable. Yeah.
And so Chris's email went to the wayside. I did not see it. I didn't know it existed. And I got a call from him. I didn't recognize the number. So again, I'm going through things. So I was not answering. I was like, I don't have time for this. But he left me a very long message saying, hey, I've been trying to get in contact with you. We have this PE project celebrating the 30th anniversary of Apocalypse 91. Do you want to be on it? And I'm like, what? Like any type of issue I was having just flew out of my head. I'm like, yes, I want to be on this. I'm about it. And then I called him and we had a long conversation about the project and what the vision was, what Chuck's vision was, what Chris was thinking about. And I was extremely excited and automatically invested, just in terms of just having this sort of apocalyptic event that's happening because the world is in revolution. Like we are, like there isn't not just a revolution, but an evolution happening, and it happens every 100 years to 1,000 years, with every year ending in 91. I said, listen, this is for me. This is for me. It's I'm about the future. I'm about revolution and how the evolution part of it connects. So yeah, I was all in.
Nice. Now for me, I'd actually been knocking on Chris's door for some time while he was at Marvel, and he kept telling me, he's like, I'm gonna put you onto something. And it just happened 2020. I'm sure 2020 was a rough year for everybody. And you can't help but watch the news. You can't help but just experience those things and take them to heart. Things just things like Trump walking down the street with a Bible in his hand, or they're firing on protesters. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like I said, I had always been very interested in like you said, the revolutionary spirit, right? And I had just so happened to do an MF Doom tribute comic because he had just passed away. So I had already been felt smacked down a little bit, And Chris approached me because of that, because I guess he didn't realize, Troy likes hip hop too, So he approached me about it, and because of that, and as soon as he said Chuck D, Public Enemy, I was like, yeah, I will absolutely do that. I'll backtrack. I'll look at all the illegally downloaded music and the legally downloaded music I have. Public Enemy. I'll do Fear of the Black Planet. Right. Fear of the Black Planet takes a million. I'll find all that stuff, and then I'll go back and I'll just listen to. And I actually had never listened to, I should say, Apocalypse 91 before, even though I had definitely already had heard. I think it was Showing What You Got on that album, and. So I just jumped on it, and Yeah, it was interesting because like at that, like in that year alone, like you couldn't help but feel it. Like you said, it was just everywhere, and so like
Mhm.
it just went through my brain to my fingers, and I just typed it out, and then Coy brought it to life. Speaking of which, let's talk about stories, right? So this is speculative fiction, right? We all kind of were tasked with finding our own version of what the apocalypse would look like, right? Which I think was really fascinating because we all had different approaches. Like I think some people went more Afrofuturism, some went more, slightly more futuristic, like not too far flung, but definitely like felt more like a modern take, or contemporary take. So I'm gonna start with Evan. What's your story about, and also who's the artist? Because we also want to give them a shout out.
The artist of mine is Dave Chisholm, who's
Mm.
an amazing artist, who's also a jazz musician.
Yeah.
And he had a band back in the day, and he's got a graphic novel coming out, also from Z2 in January, called Enter the Blue, which is this kind of trippy, magical realist tribute to jazz. But Dave was an artist on my book, and when I was thinking about my story, um, it's set in the far future, and I was thinking about, okay, what do I want to explore here? And I was really thinking about like using this as an opportunity to think about melding like the politics and the activism of mutual aid, where people form independent small organizations like neighborhood watches or support organizations, basically to fill in the gaps with services and support that they're not getting institutionally otherwise, right? So um, I wanted to think about how could I fictionalize that within a speculative fiction, science fiction framework. So that's kind of the impetus.
Mm.
And the story I kind of landed on was, like I said, set in the far future. Main character is a member of a strata of beings that I call the elevated, right? These are people who came from the downtrodden, ignored socioeconomic classes of their planet, and miraculously and semi unexplained, their consciousnesses evolve into pure energy, and they kind of pull other people along out of these miserable existences. They exist as pure energy, and once every couple of cycles, they go through what I call the coalescence cycle. The energy converts back to human bodies, and they use what they've learned and their abilities to help other people, other sentient beings throughout the universe. So, part of what I was thinking was, you know, I don't know if anybody here also read. I'm assuming most of y'all did. Heavy metal.
Hmm.
The
Oh yeah.
kind of like science fiction meets like hard rock aesthetics magazine from France.
Mm.
I was thinking about like, yo, I used to read heavy metal back in the day, but there were never any black people in heavy metal. What would a story
Right.
be like with
Right.
black people in heavy metal? And yo, you're laughing, Regine, but that was definitely part of like my inspiration. So
Yeah.
that was the kind of story I tried to write, where what also, of course, the like political and social justice underpinnings being part of it, it's PE. But yeah, so that's kind of what my story is, and I think I'm the last one in the anthology because it's set in the far future. I think the anthology is organized
Third.
chronologically.
Mm.
The third one, okay, the third one.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so that's where it came from, and I'm really happy with the way it turned out. It was I tried to do something in terms of some of the structure and narration. With a project like this, that's really kind of focused on operating premises that live outside of like the big mainstream superhero universes that we're used to. Like you really can swing hard, right? And you don't have to worry about like, oh, where is this character? What happened the last time they appeared? Um, and I felt it was very freeing to operate
Mm.
in that context for this
Mm.
project, which was, I think in line with the ethos of Public Enemy.
Absolutely. What about you, Regine? What's your story about? And also, shout out the artist.
My artist is Carlos Alvarez,
Mm.
and he did a tremendous job in general. Enjoying the book. It's enjoying the story. It's so beautiful. My story was inspired by these helmets that I wear outside in the street during these COVID times.
Yeah.
So the helmet that you see the young lady wearing, I actually have one, or two, or three, or four, or five. And what I wanted to do was have a story that wasn't in the far distant future. It takes place in 2091, where you have a pandemic similar to the one that has happened with us, that's taken place, and it's caused it so that it's very, very hard to breathe. The air is very toxic, and everyone is forced to wear these helmets that also work as computers. They work as phones, and essentially the radiation has caused most folks who have worn it, specifically like the first generation, to get powers. And essentially the government is not too fond of that, and so they have these various different um, mental abilities, and now that people know that folks have these abilities, now they have to get registered. um, they they have to essentially be sort of cordoned off, and so the story is definitely inspired by um, other things that I've read in my childhood, but this to me felt like the most tangible about how people who were once disempowered can even now be even more disempowered, because now you have this extra element of abilities and powers and such. And as opposed to just them continuously being oppressed, like in this story, they do end up being taken away by a larger power, a larger entity, um, and they're basically taken to a place where they can hone themselves and then come back and help their world. So that's essentially is my story.
Awesome. Actually, what is your story called? Did you give it a name?
It's called Night Train.
Night Train. All right. And what about you, Evan? What is the name of your story?
Oh man, I forgot the name of my story. Oh man.
I only asked because I don't think it's actually in the printed version. It doesn't say what
It's
the
not.
names are. So yeah.
Yeah, that's why I can't remember.
It's
Let me get
okay.
back
It's
to
all
you
right.
all that. Like, yeah.
It's okay. It's all right. It's all right. So actually, so Coy and I work together, and Coy, you're representing the artist side here, and I was basically tasked with opening the anthology up, and my instructions from Chuck D's manager, very specifically, was it needed to be a doctor, right, and it needed to take place in like early '90s LA. So, after trying to take a pass at trying to make this person a medical doctor, I kind of realized, you know what, let me make this person a doctor of like music.
Yeah.
And once I kind of sorted that out, that kind of all came together and it kind of worked better for me. And Coy, you want to talk a little bit about the story? Like you were tasked with drawing it, especially like the just recreating Los Angeles in the early '90s.
Well, first off, that was interesting in and of itself.
Yeah.
Because I was living in, I believe in North Carolina at the time. Even though I'm originally from New York, as you can see from the New York Mets hat. But I had lived in North Carolina for about 6 years, and like I said, when I became, I guess, more aware of Public Enemy's lyrics, it was in North Carolina. So here I am, surrounded by a certain element. I won't say it was. It definitely wasn't a bad town. I was living in Asheboro, North Carolina, and it basically race for the first time in my life anyway started to pop into my face, and that was like so basically redrawing or I guess or recreating LA of '91. My only reference of that time really was Snoop and Dre.
Yeah.
So recreating that entire era of that time was really just really going back into my own memory of what I was going through in '91 at that time. I had just got out of I hadn't quite got out of high school yet. I was about to graduate in the next 2 years. But the vibe, the whole aura of that time it was pretty much almost close to what we're going through today. And my task was basically to create a feeling that sound familiar, but yet also go with this vibe that, Dr. Bey is basically telling us about, warning us about. So I just wanted basically to create images that would live up to what he was saying, but also be so eerily close to what we're living with today that you don't feel like you're too far removed from what Dr. Bey is describing. You're pretty much saying, whoa, okay, I just put this jacket on, but this jacket has a lot of wrinkles in it that has been that has a lot of steps, a lot of like loose wiring, or loose there's loose parts to it that basically needs to be depicted in a certain way that feels familiar. That was my only point.
No, absolutely. I will openly admit, doing the story, I pretty much, I work for previous role, and like I can't be, pessimistic too much about stuff because I'm there to sell stuff, right? But I do kind of joke sometimes that there is a pessimism that comes from being just a black person in America, right? And I just I just vomited all of that onto the page, like, to be perfectly honest. And just like you, my references for Los Angeles were, like MC Ren, NWA, Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, like all that stuff. Like there's a picture of me in the early 90s with a flannel shirt, like thinking I'm hard, So, but yeah, like, I just put that all on the page, and there you go. There's some of Koi's artwork there, not colored, but his original pencil.
Yeah, the colors are amazing on this.
Yeah, they are. They're great. And yeah, like the idea was, like, you can't help but live in this current world, and and then to be forced to look back on early 1990s Los Angeles, you can't help but see like a correlation. Like you can't help but see the cycles, and yeah, I'll be honest, my first understanding of police brutality came from rappers from Los Angeles. So I'm glad thank you very much for fully representing that, and like it came out perfect. So how is your particular version of the apocalypse? Like, I see some people have Afrofuturism, and I see that kind of plays in there. But like, do you consider it Afrofuturism, or do you consider it something else? Like, what was your vision of the apocalypse? And I'll start with you, Regine.
My vision of the apocalypse was really just in alignment with what's going on today. Because apocalypse just means a revelation. So it's like what has been revealed to me, to us as a society, and that's what I wanted to reflect in the story. It's like, okay, something happened. We have this pandemic. What has this revealed about our neighbors, ourselves? And sometimes the revelation is stuff that we already knew, but now it's just at a higher height, and things get exposed. And so for me, that's what I was concentrating on. I was concentrating on the here and now, as well as other pieces of science fiction that are definitely more fantastical, but the premise is sort of still the same. It's like, what does this reveal about the human condition? What does this reveal about people and how they behave during extreme circumstances? And again, we definitely got a huge chunk of that during this past year. Like, we saw people behave in a way in which that made us not just pause, but say, like, look, I knew that there was an issue, but like now I see it at its peak, or close to its peak. So I just kept that in mind when I was writing the story.
Absolutely. And Koi, you talked a little bit about this already, but what was your particular version of the apocalypse, or even just the future?
All right. To show how familiar it is to us today. I think sometimes when we're told about a foretold vision or something like that, we always think it's going to happen like 60 years from now.
Right. Yeah.
Or when we talk about something good that has happened, we always romanticize it because it was in the past. I actually think that time happens, or things happen cyclically, and when it's your time to step up. I believe that this is our time to step up. I don't believe that we were given, like, for instance, in this country anyway, the civil rights movement pretty much is a precursor to what we're doing today. Those bricks that was laid then, it's our turn to pick those bricks up. So in terms of my vision, or what I thought was our vision of what the apocalypse would be, it should feel familiar. It should feel like you're right in it right now, because quite frankly, we are in it right now. And I don't, it's not so much that I don't like to draw things that are in the future or something like that. I love drawing futuristic, landscapes and stuff like that. But we're currently going through it right now, and I thought it's perfect that this is over a Public Enemy project, in particular that album, Apocalypse 91, because, like I said, for me, the lyrics went over my head. I mean, I was in high school.
Mhm.
I didn't think any of that stuff was going to happen within my lifetime. Here we are. The pandemic may have been crazy for a lot of people, and it was for me too, but it also was revelatory to me.
Yeah.
To me, this entire year and a half, 2 years, has pretty much taught me that what I thought people were, they are. But also at the same time, it's still shocking when they still come out and they show you their face anyway. Great line, is when a person, shows you who they are the first time, believe it. And that line has been repeating in my head a lot over the last 2 years. So in terms of depicting rather, an apocalypse, we're in it now. And anybody that tells you otherwise, they're just not looking at the moment.
Yeah, no, absolutely. What about you, Evan? What was your particular vision of the future or the apocalypse? You talked a little bit about this, but can you expound on that?
Yeah, can you guys see and hear me?
Oh, you're frozen. Well, you're frozen, but we can hear you.
All right, hold on. Let me.
Think we got him here.
Yeah.
All right, he's gonna jump in and jump out. Okay, cool.
This is the hazards of having live.
All right.
All right.
There you are. You're back. You're back.
There you go.
All right, cool. Yeah, so like both Coy and Regine said, I was thinking about the cyclical nature of injustice that happens throughout human history. And I think for those of us that have things set in a more science fictional backdrop or context, one of the things I think that's important to show is despite all the advancement that human beings or other speculative fiction sentient races may achieve, there's always going to be injustice. I feel like the work of social justice and activism and radical kind of institutional change requires an active compassion and active empathy, recognizing people all up and down from different socioeconomic strata as human beings, as people who deserve justice and care and comfort. So yeah, even though there's spaceships and lasers and teleportation and all kinds of extreme science fictional technological developments in my story, there are still people being left behind, right? There are still people who struggle for clean air and clean water in my story, who are not able to get the kind of medical care that they need, so for me, that apocalypse is, even as the world is burning, even as the ecological system of the first planet in my story is collapsing, the elites who are, socioeconomically powerful and politically powerful, they're happy to let the world burn. They there's a line in my story where it's like, they were just fighting to see who dies last, so and yeah, that is drawn from a certain amount of pessimism about, the current socio-political moment, the last couple of years that we felt like we've lived in, I should say. So yeah, the apocalypse is very much one for me of collapse, a collapse of infrastructure and a collapse, like I said, of empathy, where, as Black folks, I think we all understand this, whether, you're straight or queer or whatever walk of life you come from. It's like the first fight you have to fight, sometimes it's in your head, but oftentimes it's not, is recognize me as a human being, that I have the same wants and needs and goals as you. And, it feels like, again, that's a cyclical thing that we have to keep fighting for. And, you take a look at the current political landscape and the way that the political right has warped the term critical race theory, away from its actual origins as a strain of legal discourse and study into something that's just like, well, we don't want our kids learning about racism, or the past, or anything, you know. So again, it's like we have.
Think.
Was that Coy?
They don't want to critically think.
Right.
Yeah.
Well,
That's it.
And again, when we talk about things moving cyclically, that is, you know, we're relitigating, you know, our humanity throughout the ages, throughout the history of this country again, you know. So it's like, oh, okay, I guess we have to go over why the Civil War is really fought again.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
Like, I guess we have to, you know, remind y'all of like redlining and what housing injustice looks like, and why your suburbs in Long Island, like where I grew up, Levittown, was mostly white. You know, like we have to keep going over this stuff all over and over again. And let me tell you something, it's a burden. You know, like it is to constantly have to like fight these fights again, or make sure that history doesn't get lost, erased, redacted. You know, like you know, sometimes, you know, I often feel like as a culture worker, right, as somebody who writes stories and tells stories, it feels like it's not enough, you know, like, you know, I'm not at every march. I'll be real. I'm not, you know, at every moment of political protest. But this work, the way we can do this work as storytellers, is to make sure the history doesn't get erased. Is to make sure it gets reminded. And yes, we have to relitigate these battles. And yes, we have to, you know, reinscribe our humanity on the, you know, the parchment of American history, if I can get a little bit highfalutin, you know what I'm saying? Like we can't let it get washed away or burnt away or wiped away. And that's what we can do. And it's such important work. And not for nothing, it's what Public Enemy was doing too, you know?
Absolutely.
Like, you know, which I think is a video for Can't Trust It that starts in the slave fields, right? And has them working in the fields. Like they knew what they were doing, you know? Like they're clearly invoking the prior the foundational institutional injustices of this country in 1980, 1990, whatever, like, and putting themselves in those roles and be like, yep, and guess what? We're going to fast forward to the present. Same shit is still going on. Pardon my language. Yeah. So again, I feel like that's what we can do as storytellers, is to make sure that our history doesn't die and evolves and becomes more inclusive and flexible. So apocalypses happen without that work, you know, like without people to kind of speak for the different points of view of different kinds of existences, specifically in our case, you know, the multifaceted nature of Black existences in this country, that they steamroll right over us without that work.
Yeah, steamroll's a perfect word for that. Absolutely. No, I'm actually glad you said that, like, because one of the you know, there's plenty of heartbreaking things I saw over the course of 2020, but oddly enough, one of the more heartbreaking things I saw in 2020 is I saw a comic writer saying that, like, I just don't understand even the point of writing stories in this climate. And you know, I typically just lurk on Twitter. Like I just kind of stay quiet and just lurk on Twitter. But I just at that moment, right? But I had a moment where I was just like, no, that's your voice. That's important. Like, you know, I don't care if you are writing, like, you know, a superhero story, or you're writing a sci-fi story, or you're writing something that's, like, you know, highly political. Like, that's your voice, and it's important that we get that stuff out there. And you know, that was my push for doing this book as well, as I had been sitting with these thoughts and hadn't really put it on paper, and it was important to kind of just get it all out there. All right, so we're at 39 minutes. So before I run over, because I always run over, can you guys tell us what you're working on next after Apocalypse 91, what you're currently working on, etc.? What about you, Regine? What do you have coming down the line?
Oh, too much
that you can tell us.
That I can tell you. Well, number one, for folks who know, I'm the coordinator and founder of the Women in Comics Collective International, WINC for short. So we have a lot of events happening next year. Next month, we usually have a holiday bingo party, so we're going to have that virtually next month, and we're going to have our conference, WINC Creative, in person next year. It's going to be a 2-day show, so look out for more information about that. In terms of creatively, I do have some things in the pipeline that I can't talk about just yet, but I do have a short story in the Dead Beats Volume 2 anthology, London's Calling, So you can definitely cop that. And that's it for now. What can I say? What can I say?
Yeah,
Right.
no,
Don't get yourself in trouble.
I saw that panic in your eyes, Regine. You're like, wait, is it been announced
It's like,
yet?
it's like the NDAs, the NDAs.
Yeah, they're real. Sometimes they're not.
What about you, Evan? What do you have coming down the line?
What do I have coming down the line? Let's see. The next comic book thing that I'm working on that's been announced is a Suicide Squad / Amanda Waller project with Spencer Ackerman. We're cooking that up right now in the lab. That's been a lot of fun. Let's see. Comics. That's it for comics, I think. Games. I'm contributing to Marvel's Wolverine, which was announced. See, I have to say it's announced to make sure I'm not
right.
NBA ninjas creeping up at my house tonight. I'm working on that. Some other video game stuff I can't talk about. Wow, I think that's it. Because usually when I'm doing other interviews, I talk about this project, but I'm talking about this project. Yeah, I got some other comics and game stuff that I can't talk about right now. But it's going to be fun stuff. It's been great to work on. So yeah. Oh, and I should talk about Genlock, the science fiction show that coming out from HBO Max and Rooster Teeth. That started airing like 2 weeks ago. The episode I wrote airs next Thursday.
Cool.
For those who don't know, Genlock is a science fiction show that follows a cast of characters in the near future who can upload their consciousnesses to giant robots. So it's a mecha anime show. This season we go deep into the world building and the state of the world that has brought our two main factions to war. So yeah, it's a wild show that looks gorgeous. And like I said, my episode airs next week. So if you have HBO Max, check it out.
That's awesome. What about you, Koya? What do you have coming up that you can talk about?
Yeah, good question on the that I can talk about part. Basically, I have I can't really talk about that part. I have a project that basically is done. It's wrapped. It's just I can't speak on it until it's been announced. But I guess
you're not the late one, which is good.
Say it again.
You're not the late one.
Well, in this particular case, no. But but basically, if I have another like creator-owned project that I am working on. Been talking about it for like a little bit, but I actually am starting the actual guts of it at the moment. It's called Soul Retriever. I could get into it. The only thing I could say right now is that it's basically a space pirate adventure where we're following one lady who discovers that she's a part of this galactic universe, galactic empire, basically. So before I can even go any further than that, I'm actually designing all of the characters at the moment, designing for a sketchbook for next year's convention circuit. So
nice.
Pretty much all I can really say at the moment. You know, stay tuned.
All right, cool. As for me, I do have a personal project that I'm staying quiet about until I have all the pieces lined up. But my book, Fight of the Century, which I've been working on for some time, is actually going to be getting distributed soon. So it's going to be going into comic shops. So definitely keep an eye out for that. And it'll be available to pre-order in the early half of 2022. So definitely check that out. It's MMA and evil pharmaceutical companies and people getting the shit kicked out of them. So there you go. Thank you. And hey guys, seriously, thank you for doing this. I appreciate it so much. Demetrius, did I do good? Are we at the 44 mark?
You're perfect. And
Okay.
and I would like to piggyback on what all your wonderful projects. Not many people know I went into VR over the pandemic in order to create real world experiences where not only you can access through what we call the your device, tablet, laptop, desktop, computer, but also literal VR. So you can come in and get your Oculus Quest, Oculus Quest 2, and you can literally walk into this space. This year, I should say for Urban Action, we're featuring a few of you guys. Of course, as you can see, Fight of the Century is one of them. Ice Witch is another. But simply, you come in here, right? And you click whoever you want to see. So for now, I want to see Fight of the Century, and voila, here I am in Fight of the Century. So everything in this space actually has what we call active links. So if I click this artwork here, it's literally going to take me to purchase it. Okay. So we can do this one of two ways. We do this for comics where it's an actual living comic experience. So you can walk through the comic and then you're able to have it read to you, or you can actually pick the language from whence it is you want it, narrated out. And you can also control the background. This is just the basic showcase that we do. Quickly, I think I have one moment. So I'll show you the Michael Golden. I'm sure you heard of him. Michelle Wetterstater. They're doing Spartan X, which you guys know as Jack Chan Comics, right? Well, that's what I call it, Jack Chan Comics. But anyway, okay, so with Spartan X, they're doing a Kickstarter for their graphic novel. And what we decided to do is give you a true VR comic experience. So what you do is you start at the cover, and from the cover, as you can see, it lands you right here to page 1, and you walk and you read each page of the comic. Now, once again, doing this in VR, I would love to get more of our people, you know what I mean by our people, into technology, into VR, because that's definitely the future. So just to give you a little bit of the specs here, if I went into what we call full immersion mode, which is get out of your living room, which means when you're in Oculus Quest or Oculus Quest 2, you start in a living room experience. Then you bring the browser on the screen, and then you can literally walk into the space. So like Scotty will beam you up, and you're in this space. So if you're in this space, these ceilings are 30 feet high. This width is about a good 15 feet. So you're looking up and you're in awe with all of this action, so to speak. And you just keep climbing through this comic here until you reach the end and you're able to go. And within this space, we have a couple of little hidden gems, like you can change the environment. So if you look outside right now, it's just blue skies, or, in a sense, but we're a little biased here in New York City. So we allow you to have this experience in New York City itself. So that's one of the things that we want the viewers to be able to experience at Urban Action this year, along with the expo. I got like 30 seconds, so I'll just show you the expo really quick. This is where now you can really engage with the various artists and the brands and the people at the same time. So that's what's really important. We can get the people in here at the same time, and you guys can talk, chat, whatever. We're going to be streaming live certain things in here. But as you can see, our sponsor, Warner Media. But I'm going to go roll over here to Troy's booth, just so they know that we actually can connect all of these activations. So for when we did Fight of the Century, we actually did a proof of concept with what you're seeing now. So basically this booth right here will take you directly to another, what we call VR experience. So when you're in VR, you're going to go, if both experiences are in VR, but if they're in separate, what we call environments, what will happen is you'll get kicked into your living room, and then once the environment load, you go right, then you click the goggles and go right back into the environment. So that's basically what we're doing. Troy, you got another panel coming up
tomorrow, right?
Tomorrow.
Yep, I was going to say, I hope it's tomorrow.
Yep, Spartan X with Michael Golden and Michelle with a stater. And, you'll be talking to them. And then you have a panel on Saturday, the 20th.
Yes, I
If
do.
I'm not mistaken, 12 noon, MF Doom, as you
Yep.
mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd like to take the time now to say thank you to every one of our guests. Of course, I got to shout out Regine. She's been with me the longest. Regine, of course. Troy, thank you for putting this together.
Absolutely, man.
Evan and Coy. I hope to work with you guys in the future, especially in VR, because we have some stuff that you've never seen before, literally never seen before, that will blow your mind, and that you can take comics and storytelling to a whole nother future and space that's new at this point. So
I think it's a great crowdfunding tool. Actually, I want to point that out because I'm definitely going to take advantage of that aspect of it. So
I'm glad you said that, because that's what we're doing with Spartan X, is the Indiegogo campaign. So that's exactly what we're doing with that. But please, everybody stay safe, because I want to see you guys in the natural, tangible future. Skin to skin, I would like to say, because believe me, that's VR is very tangible. But skin to skin, I would like to see you there. Once again, thank you all for joining us. And up next will be 4 p.m. We've got La Femme Fatale, which is our Women in Action cinema. All right, we've got folks from the new Never Back Down. I think it's part 4.
right, there's a lot of them.
Yeah. Part 4. All right, everybody stay safe, and we'll see you next time.
Take
Thanks,
care, y'all.
guys.
Thank you so much.